live from the law office of Olu Asekun. Today, Dr. Asekun unfortunately is not going to be available to the podcast, but he asked me to step in on his behalf for, actually, to continue with the series of living and working in the United States. Last week, we were discussing visa bulletin, which is which actually ties to what we're going to be discussing today, which is going to be consular processing. So, consular processing is the other option when to get an immigrant visa, except that this is only for people that are abroad. It only applies for people who are not present in the United States or do not have the option of adjusting status. So the consular processing, what it does is to allow you to process your immigrant visa, that is your green card or permanent residence, from the country where you were born or the country where you live, if you have a legal status in that country. So after your immigrant petition has been approved by USCIS here in the United States, what immigration does now, once they do know that you are not currently present in the United States, they will be forwarding your approval and your file to the National Visa Center. So the National Visa Center, it's the department in charge of or responsible for collecting not only the fees for the next stage, which is the immigrant visa application and affidavit of support fee, if this is family based. They will also be collecting all the documents related to your application. So once everything is complete, then they will be forwarding your file now to the embassy, where the embassy, of course, will be calling you for an interview. Now, there are two categories of consular processing. We do have the family based ones and the employment based ones. So, again, as I mentioned earlier, if the person is not present in the United States after approval of the immigrant petition, or if the person is not eligible to adjust status, then is when we proceed with consular processing. Now, once the immigrant petition has been approved, as I mentioned earlier, the USCIS will send now the file to the National Visa Center, and then the National Visa Center will be contacting you. Sometimes it's via email, which is most of the time lately, and some other times it will be by regular mail. By the time you do get this communication, most of the time it's just to let you know that they are now in possession of the file, and that it is time now to proceed with that case. There are some other instances where they will tell you, you know what, yes, we do have the file, but no visas are current for this category. Therefore, you cannot proceed yet. But when you do get this type of email, they will be assigning you a case number and an invoice ID number. Once you do get that, you can log in to their website, which is ceac.state.gov. You log in using the provided information by the National Visa Center, and then you will know whether it's time to pay the immigrant visa fee and the affidavit of support fee if it's family based, or only the immigrant visa fee if it's employment based. Remember, it is not necessary and it does not apply for someone who's applying for a green card based on employment to pay the affidavit of support fee. That is only applicable for family based immigrant visa applications. So the first step, once you get communication from the National Visa Center, to take is to make the payment, which is currently, I believe it's $325 per person. That is the immigrant visa application fee. And the affidavit of support fee is $120. The total fee, between the immigrant visa fee and the affidavit of support fee, is $445. That is per person. Normally, if you are applying for one person alone, that is the amount to pay. But if there are other derivative beneficiaries coming with the principal applicant, in that case, then every single person will have its own fee, which is normally the $325 additional to what I mentioned earlier, the 445. Now, it is important to note that the affidavit of support fee will cover the full family. So there is only one affidavit of support fee that you're supposed to pay, even if the family is 5, 6, 7 different family members. They will all come and be covered with that affidavit of support fee of 120. The only thing they will pay separately and individually is the 325 that has to do with the immigrant visa application fee. Now, once that payment has been made, it will normally take them about 3 to 5 days for the payment to clear in their system. And once the payment has cleared in their system, then they will now allow you to not only fill out the form DS-260, which is a immigrant application form, immigrant visa application form, but they will also allow you to upload all the supporting documents that have to do with that case. Now, what are the required documents to submit? Well, everything that will support um, the person's identification, and of course, all the biographic information that is required for this person to be later interviewed by the embassy. Normally, the basic documentation that they will ask you to provide for every applicant is the birth certificate. They will ask you for passport pictures. They will ask you for data page of the international passport. They will also ask for police report if the person is 16 years and above. And it is important to know that if that person has lived in different countries for more than 6 months from age 16 and up, then you will also be required to provide a police report for every country where that person has lived for, again, 6 months or more from age 16. The other requirements is the if the person is married, of course, marriage certificate. If the person has children and the person did not have children at the time the petition was filed, then of course you will need to update the National Visa Center with this information. That way, that person or the immigrant will be able to also bring his family along. It is important to know that only spouses and children under 21 can immigrate at the same time as the applicant. So if the applicant has any children who are under 21 and a spouse, we have to update the National Visa Center with this information. How do you normally update them? Well, you send them a request and tell them, well, this person is now married, and this person has children. So you would just have to provide them with evidence, which would normally be birth certificates um, and the marriage certificate for, to prove the marriage. Once the file has been updated, they will issue an invoice for every single person that was added to the case if there's any updates. So again, now that they are allowing you to upload all the documents required, once you submit the civil documents for the applicants, then the sponsor, which is the petitioner in this case, will have to provide the latest tax return. In this case, it will be 2023 tax return, W-2s, 1099s, pay stubs to prove that this person is currently working, and then evidence of proof of address, evidence of legal status in the country. So if the person is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, then a copy of the permanent resident card or the certificate of naturalization or U.S. Passport, the data page of the U.S. passport. All this, it's to be uploaded. This is again if it's only family based. So once you have done all that, the National Visa Center will now review the documents that you submitted. Normally, I mean, it can take anywhere between 1 week to a month. I they've been kind of fast lately, so I would say, I mean, a month is just too much, but just in case, just to give them a little more time for them to review. So once they finish reviewing everything, they will tell you if there's anything missing or not. And you just have to keep up and make sure that every communication that you do get from them, you just log in to their case. That way you will be in the loop and you will really always know what is going on with that case. Once they have received everything, they will send you an email telling you that the person to immigrate, that is the applicant, has now become documentarily qualified. It only means that they already have all the documents required for the processing of that case. So that is just for family based. Now I'm going to um, I'm going to explain a little bit more about the employment based ones. So for the employment based ones, it's a little different because most of the time you are going to get communication from them by regular mail instead of an email. And then is when they're going to provide you with the case number and the invoice ID number. Once you log in, for employment based, the immigrant visa fee, it's a little lower. Last time we wow, how much was it last time? I think it was $220 instead of 325. It's around there. It's $215 or $225, somewhere around there. It's a little lower. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the affidavit of support fee is not required. This is again because it's employment based, so they know that as soon as the person immigrates or it's admitted to the country, the person will have a source of income. Therefore, no one needs to sign an affidavit of support on behalf of that person. So once it's employment based and you pay that fee, which is the um, immigrant application fee, no, and the payment has been made. Again, you log in online. I mean, you log into their website, again, ceac.state.gov. You log in, you make the payment, and then you will be able to send the documents. Now, the difference is that depending on the category of the employment based, sometimes they will tell you, you know what, you just need to mail it to us, or you can email it to us, or you can upload it. They will give you instructions. For derivative applicants of VAWA, for example, VAWA beneficiaries, they will only ask you to mail it to them. So that is at least the latest ones that we have processed. That's the way it is. And for beneficiaries or derivative beneficiaries of investors, the last time we processed one was via email, but they give you a specific email address. So you would just have to follow the instructions on the correspondence that you get from the National Visa Center. That way you will know exactly how to send your documents to them. Again, once they do receive all the documents that are required by the National Visa Center, then they will again let you know that whoever you're applying for, you're trying to process this case for, will has become documentarily qualified. Once we have this type of email, it's only a matter of time, meaning that as soon as the person becomes documentarily qualified, the National Visa Center will now communicate with the embassy of the United States on wherever the case is supposed to be processed at. that the person has now all the required documents. So what happens then is that once the embassy is aware that this person it's has completed all the documentation required, they will now put him in line to wait to be scheduled for an immigrant interview at the embassy. So in this case,
It said 345 for unemployment based.
okay, maybe it increased
Yeah, it looks
with
like it.
the
Yeah.
last time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but it used to be like 215. Okay, so $345 is the immigrant visa application fee for employment-based immigrant visas at the National Visa Center. But again, once you do get correspondence and you log into their website, they will tell you the exact amount that you have to pay. Like I mentioned to you, it could be a little different from what I'm mentioning today. Um, but yes, it's around that amount. It's really not as expensive as when you're applying for adjustment of status here in that country. So once the embassy has been notified that the applicant has become documentarily qualified, it's just a matter of wait. It's just a matter of time. You just have to wait until the embassy has an available date to be called for an interview. So how are you going to know whenever you have to be there for the interview? So the embassy will now contact the National Visa Center, and then will tell them, well, remember this person that became documentarily qualified. Okay, so we're ready for this person. Excuse me. We're ready for this person. Okay, great. So this is the date. I need you to communicate that to the applicant. Now, the National Visa Center will send you another email and tell you, well, you have now been scheduled for an interview, and this is going to be the address, the time, the date when you have to appear. There are certain steps that need to be taken as soon as you know that you have been called for an interview. The very first step that you need to do or that you need to take is to make sure that your case or your documents are up to date. Now, why am I saying this? Because there are some times that cases after someone becomes documentarily qualified that have waited about 3, 4 years before they call in for an interview, meaning that the documents that we're submitting 3 or 4 years before, of course, they need to have the most up to date documents. And I'm talking about police reports because they're only valid for a year. The sponsor will also have to submit the latest tax return and make sure that the person is still within the poverty guidelines and that the person can still sponsor the applicant. In I will say, in case the income amount has changed for the sponsor, there's always the option of getting a co sponsor. So it doesn't mean that the case will be put aside or anything like that. You just have to get a co sponsor, and that person will now step in and say, well, these are my, this is my income, and I am willing to co sponsor for the applicant. So again, same documents that were submitted for the petitioner or the sponsor will have to be submitted for the co-sponsor. Evidence of citizenship or permanent residence, the latest tax return, latest W-2s, 1099s, pay stubs, and then of course a signed affidavit of support. All these will have to be added again to the National Visa Center platform. And then, of course, once they call in for interview, it's always better to take those original documents with them to the interview. The Once they call in for the interview and everything has been updated, they will give you instructions on creating an account online. This is different from the account from the National Visa Center, where they provided you with the case number and the invoice ID number. In this case, this is an account that you have to create with ustraveldocs.com. And the purpose of creating an account with ustraveldocs.com is so you can choose the courier delivery location on where to pick up your passport after it's been stamped by the embassy. So what happens? So they call you for interview. You've updated your file and everything online. You give those new documents to the applicant to take with him or with her to the interview. And then before you they attend the interview, they will have to do the medical examination, which is very important. Remember, COVID, it's a required vaccine. It's required by the federal government, so they need to be vaccinated against COVID. Um, Take all those records with you when you go to the clinic. There are certain clinics that have been assigned or approved by the embassy in every country. So you just need to make sure that you go to any of those clinics. And then, of course, there are certain things that you will need to take with you, like passport pictures, your original passport, make the payment, and then your short record. If you do not have a short record, the least you can take with you or that you have to take with you will be the COVID vaccination card. Otherwise, if the COVID vaccine is not present in the in your medical examination, they will not give you or grant you your immigrant visa. This is very important. Um, Again, once they call you for interview, and you have updated your case, you have done your medical examination, you have to create that account with ustraveldocs.com. I know for Nigeria, that website will be changing soon. I believe in the next 60 days, but they haven't given us the new website on where to create that new account. But for now, it's still the ustraveldocs.com website. Um, Once you have created that account will have the most up to date information about your contact information, your current international passport information. And then is where you will be able to choose the courier delivery location on where you will be picking up your passport upon approval. So let's say you have already taken all these steps. You have already updated your file at the National Visa Center portal. You have already done your medical examination, and you have already created your account for the courier delivery. Remember, the medical examination, most of the times, it will be forwarded to the embassy by the clinic. That's why it's important to go to the clinics that have been approved by the embassy because they know how to proceed. Now, when you get to the embassy, there are certain documents that are required for you to be able to even just enter the place. The first thing they're going to ask you to provide is the DS260 confirmation page. This is the page that will have a barcode on it, and this is the evidence that you did submit your application for immigrant visa online. Once you complete the DS260 form, they will give you confirmation page. That one you will need to print it out and keep it with you until you're called for the interview. The second thing they're going to ask you to provide and they will want to see is the evidence that you do have an interview that day. Because normally these interviews are notified to you via email. Just make sure that you print out the email that you got from the National Visa Center where they tell you the time and the date and the place where you have to be. That way they can allow you into the embassy. Of course, it is always better to take with you your original documents and a photocopy, even though all this has already been submitted. That's the alarm, right?
It's like a.
I think it's the city.
What is it?
Yes, the city alarm. I'm not sure. I'm sorry for that. We can hear the alarm of the city, so we don't know what's going on. Anyway, so once you have been called for the interview, as I mentioned to you, you would just make sure that you take all these originals with you. And I'm talking about birth certificates. I'm talking about, one second, let me just open it here. Yes, so once, and I'm talking about birth certificates in original and a photocopy, even though they already have the one that we submitted online. They will also ask you to, any civil documents that you do have in originals, and I'm talking about police reports, birth certificate, marriage certificate, international passports, any of those documents, they will all need to be taken in original, so they're able to confirm and verify the day they're interviewing you. Um, the Once you've provided all this and once you are approved, then the embassy will collect your passports. Your international passport will be collected that day if you were approved, and then they will tell you that they're going to send it to the location that you chose or that you picked when creating the account at the US Travel Docs website. So that's why it's important to do and to create an account before you do go there. Mhm.
It says it tests the siren system on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m.
Oh, they're just
Yeah,
testing
it's
it.
just
Okay,
testing.
okay.
Sorry.
So yeah, false alarm. There's nothing going on. Um, they're just testing the alarm of the city. Okay. So now that we know we're safe, let me just continue. So again, all these documents need to be taken with you. That way, there's no delay on their part or on your part, because yes, they do give you this checklist on where you can go. This is again the U.S. Department of State website where you can go to and then just check what documents you're supposed to take with you based on your category. But is most of the time, or what I just mentioned earlier, like all your civil documents that prove that the documents that you submitted, they are legit, they are unaltered, and they have not been amended, or there's no other update. um, that's it. Once they collect your passport, they will send it to the location of your choice, and then they will now notify you, normally via text message, that your passport is ready to be picked up. Sometimes they send you email, sometimes they send you a text message. That's why when you do create your account at the ustraveldocs.com website, make sure you do include your current contact information. That way, you will always know when there is an update on your case, specifically to pick up your passport. Once your passport has been picked up at the location, which is normally a DHL location, you will collect it, and then that will have your immigrant visa stamped on it. That means that your immigrant visa has been approved and you are now ready to come and immigrate to the United States. Now, are you a permanent resident at the time that you collect your passport? No. The answer is no, because in order for you to become a permanent resident, you have to be first admitted to the United States. It means that you have to travel to the United States, and as soon as you arrive and you go through the CBP port, you will show now that you have an immigrant visa stamped on your passport. And once they admit you, they will stamp you as they will give you an admission stamp. They will stamp your passport, and that will be evidence that you have now been admitted. As soon as you have been admitted, then yes, you can call yourself now a permanent resident of the United States. So yes, that's the process of the consular processing. There are certain instances where people, let's say, the petitioner filed a petition, right? Um, and the person or the beneficiary was at the time living in Nigeria, for example. Then that person, as the time passed, that person immigrated to the UK, and the person has now a legal status in the UK. Now, is it possible to change your um, your country of chargeability to the UK? Yes, it is possible, because if you're able to prove that you are legal in the country where you're residing at the time your visa becomes current for you, then yes, you can always do a change of location on where you want the case to be processed at. So it will be just a matter of deciding whether you want them to process it in Nigeria or the UK. That is up to you, for as long as you're able to prove that you're legal in the country where you want the change to be at. Okay, so for now, it looks like we have received some questions. I'm going to be answering them to the best of my ability. But if you do have any um, other questions that I'm not able to answer, of course, we can address them next week once Dr. Ashekun is back in the office. Okay, so the first question is question via text. You mentioned that you can do consular processing in countries where you have a legal status. I have a visitor status in a country. Can I do the interview there instead? Visiting visa, it is not proof of extended stay or legal stay in a country. You will only be able to change the location of the processing of your case if you can show that you have been allowed to stay in that country for longer than just a visiting visa. It will have to be, I believe, at least 6 months or more. I'm sorry, from 6 months and beyond. And normally, what will give you that is maybe like a work permit where it entitles you to be in that country for longer than just 6 months or the visiting time, or maybe because you have now become a permanent resident of that country, or maybe a citizen of that country. If you're able to prove that you are just not a visitor, but that you do have a legal status in that country, then yes, you can change it. The second question via sent via text. If I have a case currently with the National Visa Center for a marriage-based green card, can I still get a visitor visa to come see my spouse? You can apply. Yes, you are not excluded from applying. Of course, again, this is a visa. Visiting visas are based on, where you're able to prove that whether you're coming to stay here or not. But if for example, the officer that is interviewing you for the immigrant for the visiting visa has the minimum idea that you're planning to come and stay here and wait for your process to be over here, you will normally not be approved. But if you're able to prove that yes, you only want to come and visit and that you do have enough ties to your country of origin, then yes, I mean, I don't see why you would not be approved. But you do need to show that your intention is not coming to stay, but just to visit and then just go back to the country where you live. The next one is, um, can someone that is in the United States apply for consular processing? What are the benefits or disadvantages of doing so? No, for someone that is currently present in the United States, you cannot do consular processing. Consular processing only applies for people who are not currently present in the United States. It's only for people that are abroad and they're waiting for the process to, and they are willing to finish the process abroad. And so once the process is finished, then they will come and be admitted to the United States. If you're present in the United States, you can only apply for adjustment of status unless something in the law does not allow you to, or says that you're not eligible for adjustment. Then yes, sometimes you can change to consular processing depending on what your situation is. But you will have to leave the country before you can do, or once you start the consular processing. The consular processing. What is the next one? Under what circumstances must an applicant obtain a police certificate from a local police authority? From a local police authority, would that be like from the country where they spend it? Okay, so for the consular processing, they always ask you to provide a police report. So now the police reports have to, of course, if you have lived, you will have to get a police report for every country where the person has lived from age 16 and up for at least 6 months. So let's say I'm from Mexico, right? Originally from Mexico. So if I'm doing consular processing, I will know that I will have to get a police report from Mexico. But let's say that after, I was 17 and I lived maybe in France for 1 year, or I lived in a different country for another 6 months or so, then I know I will have to get a police report from these two countries because, again, I was already 17 years old, which is above 16, and I lived there for more than 6 months. So I will need to get a police report for every single country, again, for where you have lived for at least from 16 years old for more than 6 months and for more than 6 months. So yes, police report is required every single time you do consular processing. Um, what is a packet three? A packet three. I don't think I've heard that before.
That's awesome.
Maybe I know it with a different name.
Like the packet that they give you to take there.
Oh, I
They
see.
said it was called a packet.
Okay, why do you know the name?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, this is something I forgot to mention. I honestly, I maybe I've seen it. I just didn't know it by that name. But yes, once you are approved by the embassy and you pick up your passport, you will be giving a packet. That packet, it's an envelope and it's a sealed envelope. That envelope will be given to you together with the passport. What is the purpose of this packet? Once you are admitted to the country, this envelope you're going to hand it to the officer that is admitting you to the United States. What is contained in that document? That's your immigration documents. That's what immigration will be able to use, that yes, you are being admitted legally, and this package is very important so they can create a file here in the United States for you. You hand it over to them, you don't keep it, they are the ones that keep it. Now in some other countries I've already seen, and I started seeing it already, I think Mexico is one of them. I haven't seen I think the UK is another one. They have already implemented the electronic packet 3, which means that a lot of countries are no longer getting that sealed envelope. That those instructions of the sealed envelope, or what it used to contain, now it is contained on the immigrant visa that is already stamped on the passport, and it will have the instructions that the packet is already in an electronic format, so immigration will have access to it once they see that the person is immigrating with that immigrant visa with the instructions of the electronic packet. So again, not every country has implemented that, but there are some of them that already have electronic packets. Okay, next one is, there is currently a war going on in my country. I petitioned for my spouse and child, and I am worried about their safety. Can I expedite my case? You can always request for an expedite request of the petition, yes. Um, and of course, you will just have to, send supporting documents that, of course, the United States is aware of where their war is going on. But yes, always submit evidence of your request. Send a written petition where you ask them to expedite it and the reasons why you wanted to expedite it. It is um, up to the officer's criteria if they do decide to expedite it or not, but it's always worth giving it a try. Yes, you can do that. Mm, okay, based on my safety concerns, can I also change the country where my family has their interview? Yes. Yes, because they do know of the, let's say you, in this case, I mean, there is a war in Sudan. And we do have different clients that have requested not only for expedited requests of the petitions, but they have also asked us to change the location of the processing of their case. These are one of the exceptions where the U.S. Department of State and the embassy will process cases even if you're not able to prove that you do have a legal extended stay in the second country. So let's say for people from Sudan, I know they have the option of going to Egypt, and there are so many people that have done so. We have done the change of location for the processing of their immigrant visas from Sudan to Egypt before. And most of the time they will ask you to prove that the person is living in that country. So normally they will ask you to provide maybe utility bills or maybe a lease agreement where it shows that the immigrant or the applicant, sorry, lives in that country, and that's where they are currently residing. Once you're able to prove that, and of course they know the current situation of Sudan, they will grant the request for the change of location for the processing of their immigrant visas. Yes. Mm. My H-1B cap subject petition was approved. Do I need to go to my home country for my initial H-1B visa stamping? So the H-1B, if it was a change of status, I mean, you are allowed to start working for the petitioner from October the 1st, which is when the fiscal year starts. Once October the 1st, once it's October the 1st, then you're eligible and allowed to legally work for the employer that petitioned for you. Now, let's say you do have to travel outside of the United States. Remember, because you did a change of status in the United States, you did not come in using that status. Maybe you were here on an F1 as a student, maybe you came here as a visitor. So the kind of visa that you use to enter the country is different from the new category that you have, which is H1B. You do not have to leave the country if you don't want to, but let's say you have to travel. And then, so what you have to do is to file Form IA-24, unless you already specified in the petition that you wanted them to send a copy of this petition and all the paperwork to your country of origin. So let's say you are again from Nigeria and you came here as a visitor, a company petitioned for you and they got you an H1B. This is, we're still on, this is August. You're not allowed to work for the company until October the 1st. That will be the starting date for you. Of course, you don't want to travel before you can start working, because you will have to show evidence that you're currently working for the company as you were approved to do so. You have to take evidence that you're currently working for the company, maybe pay stubs, a letter of employment. If you have already filed taxes, then of course show them your taxes based on the income that you're getting from this company. Now, once you have all this evidence with you and then you need to travel, you will be able to travel to the country that was specified on the H-1B petition. If you have to travel to a different country that was not specified on that petition, then you will have to file Form IA-24. Now, Form IA-24 is very important because that's the one that you can use to tell them, hey, you know what? I want to go to Canada. I don't want to go to Nigeria. I don't want to go to the UK. Even if you're from those countries, you have the option of going somewhere else to get your H-1B stamped on it. So you can travel outside of the country, but when coming back into the United States, because you do have a new status, which is H-1B, you will have to attend an interview at the embassy where it was specified on the H-1B petition. So again, let's say you're from Nigeria, you were approved your H-1B, you have already worked for this company for some time, you have the evidence that you have been working for this church, for this company, and then you have to travel. So you travel, there's not going to be issue on your way out, but when you come back in, before you are able to do so, you will have to schedule an appointment with the embassy of your country of origin, which is in this case Nigeria. You will schedule an appointment. You will attend your interview. Of course, you will have to fill out the form DS-160, all that. And then you attend your interview. Once you're approved, they will stamp your H-1B visa on your passport. And then once you've been stamped and you have your passport with you, you will be able to travel back to the United States with your new status stamped on your passport. Now, let's say, well, you're from Nigeria, but you don't want to go to Nigeria, you want to go to Canada. Then you will have to file Form IA-24. That form I-824 will allow you to now go to Canada because that's where you want to travel to, maybe on vacation, maybe, whatever reason you may have. So once the I-824 has been approved, it will only mean that you have instructed now USCIS to send your file or a copy of your file now to Canada, which is where you want to go to. Why? Why do you have to do that? Because if you decide to go to Canada without filing that I-824 and you schedule an appointment with them, they're not going to have a copy of your file with them. The only copy is going to be here in the United States and the other one in your country of origin because that's the country that was specified on the H-1B petition. You want to go to Canada, you need to let them know officially. How do you do that? By filing Form I-824. Once the I-824 has been approved, then you do have the approval notice of the I-824 where it shows that the consulate that you want them to designate as the consulate where you want them to process your stamp your H-1B. It's maybe Toronto in Canada. So now you do go to Toronto, you visit, um, you go to the embassy. They will interview you, maybe a quick interview about your employment, and then you will get your visa stamped on it. Again, normally once you drop your passport, they will ask you to designate a DHL location and where you're supposed to pick up your passport. Once you pick it up, then you will be allowed to come back into the United States with your new status again, H-1B. Um, Now, once you get your H-1B stamped, now you can travel wherever you want to go to until the expiration date of your H-1B status. So once you get your visa stamped, that's going to be your new status. So you can travel wherever you want to. And then on your way back in, you don't need to go to any other embassy because you will already have that visa stamped on your passport, showing that your status in the United States is H-1B. So yes, that's it's only a one-time thing until the expiration of that H-1B. Question via text. I have an approved NIW petition, national interest waiver petition. What happens if the priority date is not current right now? When can I get my green card? This is for consular processing, right? Okay. So for NIW or national interest waiver petitions, the only thing you can do is just to keep monitoring your priority date. So remember, when you filed a national interest waiver, you filed a petition or a self petition. It's Form I-140. Once that Form I-140 has been approved, or when they acknowledge the receipt of this petition, they assign you a priority date. So your priority date is pretty much your place in line for a visa, right? Right now, immigrant visas are not available for recent and national interest waiver petitions, but the visa bulletin, again, the one that we were discussing last week, is the one that will tell you whether your priority date is current or not. So just keep looking at the visa bulletin, look at your category, and make sure that, check it every month. And then once you do know that visa is current, then is when the National Visa Center will now contact you and then tell you that visa is current for you and it's time now to pay the immigrant visa application fee, and then also to proceed with the submission of documents that we were talking about earlier, and that will only mean that it's now time to proceed with the next stage of your immigration process. Next one. What happens if I am denied my marriage-based green card after the interview at the embassy? Can I appeal the decision? So in this case, what happens is that the embassy does really not have the authority to deny. I mean, they can deny you, or yes, they can deny you your immigrant visa, but they cannot deny you or revoke the immigrant petition that was submitted, that your husband submitted in order for you to be able to come here to the United States. So what happens after you've been denied? So what that happens, what's going to happen is that once you are given that letter where they tell you, well, we were not able to grant you the green card, what the embassy does now is to send the file back to USCIS here in the United States. Now, what is the purpose of it? In that, whenever they send it back, they will send a letter with all the issues they were able to detect while the interview took place. And that letter will be now sent to USCIS here in the United States. So, what happens later? So, once the USCIS receives this letter, they are going to send a letter to the petitioner here in the United States telling him to address all the issues that were raised by the embassy during the interview time. They will give you 30 days, or they will give the petitioner 30 days to address all these issues. And if the petitioner is able to address them all with no issues, then he will now send his response to USCIS. USCIS will now review his response. And if he's able to clarify every issue that was raised, then what will happen now is that USCIS will now reaffirm the previously made decision, positive decision that they made in the past. So if they're able to reaffirm the petition, it will only go back again to the embassy. Why? Because they're going to now reaffirm the petition and tell the embassy, you know what, we've been able to clarify all these issues that you raised, and everything is clear. There is no issues, there is no doubt that this is a legit marriage. And so you can now call the person again for another interview, and then that person will be given the opportunity to be interviewed again. But yes, I mean, this time that you are giving, the 30 days is crucial, so you can address any issues that might have been raised by the embassy, and then you will have the opportunity to, to defend your case and just make sure, I mean, to prove that yes, this is my spouse and I want my spouse to be with me, and this is where you're wrong. And so you just address it. Hmm. What else? Where are we? Okay. Which is faster, doing consular processing for a spouse or pursuing a fiance visa? I don't know at this time, honestly. I think fiance visa is still a little faster. So the difference with fiance visa is that I mean, you will petition for your fiance. That's, of course, if you're not married yet. You will be able to petition for your fiance. And yes, the petition for fiance are approved pretty quickly. But the person will still need to your fiance will still have to go through the process of, well, go through the consular processing. It is a little different from the consular processing that spouse-based immigrant visas proceed. But hmm,
I'm looking at the processing.
it depends a lot on how fast the petitioner moves here in the United States. But yes, because we've seen cases where maybe the petitioner is not really providing everything at the same time, or it's just more difficult to provide things because maybe they're working full time or things like. But I think fiance visa is still a little faster than the spouse based, at least to get here. Yes, yes.
But not to get the green card.
No, the difference with the fiance one is because once they get here, immigration will give you 30 days to get married, and then you will now.
90
I'm sorry. No, thank you. It's 90 days. Yes, I don't know what I was thinking. It's 90 days to get married. So upon the admission of your fiance in the United States, immigration will now give you 90 days to get married. Once you do get married, you will now have to proceed with the application for green card. Now, the good thing about it is that you no longer have to petition for this for your fiance anymore. So the I-130, it's out of question. You don't have to do that, but your fiance will still have to file application for green card, which currently is 1,440. And then, of course, she will have the opportunity to get employment authorization and then travel document. But yes, I think fiance visa is still a little faster than just spouse based green card. Yeah. And then the last question we have: what is the difference between DS 160 and DS 260? Okay, so the DS 160 is the non-immigrant application form. This is the form that everyone who wants to come to the United States as a visitor, as a student, as a fiance, will have to fill out in order to apply for the visa. And the DS 260 is the immigrant visa application form. This is the one that only people applying for immigrant visas or green card, either through employment or um, well, VAWA is employment, right? Consider employment. Oh no, we said it's family. Okay, so any application for immigrant visa, either VAWA, employment based, or family based, if the purpose is to get a green card, then is the DS260 form the one that you have to fill out. Hmm. And I think that's the end of it. I mean, we do have I mean, we did have some questions about it. This is again consular processing that we discussed today. If you do have any other questions about it, you can always, send them to us via text message. You can find all our contact information on our website, which is www.oluasekun.lawyer. And yes, that's where you will find us. We are present in all social media platforms. You can look for us there. We do this podcast every week at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays. Um, I don't even know the difference. I mean, you always do Eastern time, and I don't do that. But yes, I mean Central time it's at noon, and we were a little late today because I mean things can always. I mean some things can happen sometimes. Unexpected things can happen, but we're here today, and yes, we thought it was just important to address this subject today, and then, well, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll